all the PDF samples that were sent over. So basically this will take you more through the live environment, and then I'll leave some time open for Q&A. What I initially was going to bring about was who we are and how we started and how, you know, we got to where we are. But basically this roadmap just kind of outlines the transformation that we're constantly doing as a response to our client needs. So what we started as, and when we were born in 2013, we just branched off from IBIS World. I say that because a lot of people are very familiar with IBIS World. They've been around hundreds of years. And then they designed Procurement IQ to specifically focus on the procurement business unit, hence the name. And over the time, we've kind of evolved, adding either more reports, adding in custom work, then adding in some supplier profiles. So we're constantly enhancing our product in response to what our clients tell us. And because of that, we have a 98% renewal rate. So once you figure out how to make it work for you, it ends up being quite the resource. And we work with a lot of government agencies, you know, high and low. Just some of the benefits of how to use this. Really, I feel like what points out is this reduction of time spent on research. It sounds like you guys used to have a process in place that's no longer there, and procurement, your roles are already pretty bogged down and working extra hours. So a lot of the time, like this helps kind of reduce that time and put some actionability behind the insights that you're finding. But this slide you guys should have seen in the previous deck. I just like to put this here as how we kind of help. So before I kick off the demo, just some need to know. So all of the reports are going to be laid out the exact same within the live environment. They're going to highlight things like recent developments, buyer power score, price benchmarking, supplier information, RFP elements, and the negotiation process, which we will walk through. They can be accessed through the All Reports hyperlink or by searching keywords, which we'll see. And all reports have the option to be downloaded into PDFs. And all the reports come with an associated category-specific RFP template, which is basically a Word doc, and we'll see that that's formatted for that specific category. The other piece of our offering is the supplier profiles. I sent you guys over a Gilling, and that's an example of a supplier profile. These are all accessed through the Supplier IQ hyperlink, which you'll see. We have about 5,000 different companies for which we provide data. The data in it is going to be the company operations, competitive positioning, and some of their financial data. I will say that we have mostly public companies, but a lot of private companies. And on those private companies, sometimes you won't see financials just because that information is simply not available. When you're searching, you're going to want to search for parent companies, not subsidiaries. So if you're looking for a company in there. And then if there's not vendors in there, we have the custom arm where, like I said, that was one of our rollouts over time where we can do custom research, which takes me into our next piece. So the custom research is available on an ad hoc basis. One of the things that me and Robert talked about in previous conversations was the how to drill down at specific geographical regions, like if you guys were doing local sourcing. Our reports are covering nationwide, and we're giving you a recommendation nationwide. So if you wanted to drill down on specific geographics, it would be something that's custom. There's also, if you wanted to get more granular with a specific category, or there's a niche category you don't see, we would offer it as a custom ad hoc service. This is just kind of a sample of what that scope of work would look like with our analyst. And you'll see these links throughout the report that you can also use to request custom work. These are some of the examples of custom projects that we do, whether, like I said, it's supplier identification, if it's not in our supplier profiles, any pricing information that you want us to elaborate on, even input cost drivers, and then like full market analysis, and then just research by request. So without further ado, I will try to get out of this PowerPoint and get into the website. All right, are we still able to see my screen? Are you guys able to see the actual website now? Am I going too fast for anyone? I tend to speak like I'm from New York, and I'm definitely not.
I think we're good.
Okay, perfect. So this is what I've run through with Robert. He's familiar with this, having been a previous user, but this is the actual website. So whenever you access, you'll come to this as the home page. You'll see right here, all of our reports are updated real time. We did this mostly in response to like COVID and just how volatile the market was, where we update them real time. So if there's a change to that specific market, it'll show here, but it will also show in the report. Here are those links to all reports. If the supplier profiles, you can download all reports. These are a couple of other things that we'll dive into, like price driver profiles, but you can also easily search using this. So one of the ones we pulled up was vendor qualifications. I'm going to jump into the all reports to show you guys, because I'm assuming you all cover a little bit different categories. So they're broken down into 47 different sectors. These are the different sectors, and then they are categorized by NAICS codes. So these are all the different category reports. There's about 1,000 plus in here, with more being added constantly. I know the one that I sent you was transit buses. That was a project you guys were working on.
That's just something I've done in my past, so I was
Okay.
curious to see what it looked like.
Okay, I can pull up that unless there's a different one you want me to kind of
I
dive into.
could ask anybody on the line if there's any
Yeah.
particular category that they're interested, any vendor or any service.
Okay, I'm going to take silence as we just want one for show and tell. Unless Sonia, I'm sorry, did you have one? A project that you're working on?
I know that initially you had said that it's more of a national look at large companies, and we work a lot with smaller private companies for our architectural and engineering services. Would you be able to provide us data on one of those type of firms? And there's some of them are national.
Yeah, so the supplier profiles, those are all types of companies, private or public. It just depends on their size. So if they're
Okay.
smaller companies, because it's going to be a lot of those fortune rank companies, but if they're
Mm-hmm.
smaller companies, we can do custom. But
Can you
that's the
go
supplier.
to architectures? I saw down at the bottom, I saw
Okay.
that.
Oops. So what kind?
Architecture
Architecture
services.
services? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just jump into that too. This one we'll do just for show and tell. So anyways, like I mentioned before, all of the reports are laid out the same. So once you get into a category report, product or service, it's going to have these same tabs, same links. Everything's downloadable to a PDF. You can set up alerts in case there's a change in the market. And then you can also download RFP templates, which I sent you guys over a sample of that as well. The first tab is going to really serve as the opportunity assessment tab. And really that's like a bird's eye view, what to expect in this report. Am I wasting my time? What's not included in the report, and some hyperlinks to related reports. So as you're looking at architecture services, you may be looking at construction and project management services, and these are all hyperlinks. So if you wanted to easily navigate to that, you could.
Are these SIC codes or
They're the NAICS codes.
NAIC? Okay, thanks.
We give you a recommendation of whether we think you should buy now or buy later. Our analysts come up with that, and you'll see on the next tab what that is derived from. But it's weighted on a scale of -5 to 5, where -5 is in the favor of the supplier and 5 is really in the favor of the buyer. And the historical trend of like what's going on and why do we think you should buy now or buy later. And we know that in some cases you can't wait to buy later, you need to buy now. But then our suggestion at that time is that maybe you lock in a shorter contract, because there's probably variables like either price forecast or recent developments that are going to make that market drop. And you'll see, like I said, on the next tab, everything in this first tab is broken down in the following tabs in the report, or like you saw in the PDFs. It's just all broken down as you flow through. We give you a quick snapshot of the price trend, price forecast, and some of those top vendors, and then some of the price drivers. And then this is where the recent developments live inside the report. So if it's not showing on that recently updated report because they're updated so quickly inside of the report, you can find those recent developments and whether it's something that's positively impacting this or if it's something that is like something to look out for. These all are going to be hyperlinks to where it actually lives within the report. So there's a lot of positive things happening in this market, which is probably one of the reasons it's suggesting that you buy now. Then we'll just give you some buyer power levers. Market share concentration is low. That's going to really help you guys as the buyer. But the price drivers have fluctuated sizably in the recent years, so that's something to look out for. And then the SWOT analysis is kind of more in depth of these levers, is what I found. So as I mentioned, the buyer power score is broken up and made up of different components and how they weight. These are those components. And these are like the quantitative and qualitative criteria that our analysts give in a numerical value to say, you know, this is really impacting this market or not impacting this market. And if you wanted to jump to where these live in the report, you can easily just click them and it will take you to where they live.
So this is good information that we could share with our evaluators or our, you know, selection committees and so forth. The other thing that I remember was I thought you also had sort of questions to ask during negotiations.
Yep. Yeah, we definitely have that, and I'm getting there. Yep.
All right, thanks.
No problem. So after looking at the buyer power score, prices broken down in the price environment tab, we'll give you some key takeaways. Again, these key takeaways are meant to tell you like what you should be getting out of this information. And then a more in-depth view of that market analysis from that first page, price trend over the years, what percentage is, you know, what the TCO is, what the cost structure is. Anywhere you see a pie is an indication of a recent development. So all of this should be pretty straightforward. Now, when you're looking at the benchmark pricing, because we're taking a national average, sometimes that can be a very huge range, right? Like it can be a very large range. So what we try to do is break down the market pricing factors where we say, you know, the national average is 10.24% of the construction project cost. Some things that could drive that percentage up are like well-established reputations, specialty firms, if you're getting like a more specialized project. So when you're going out to source these events, if you're like customizing it, you can expect to have a little bit higher of a percentage of the construction project cost. This heat map is very good, especially in service categories, especially if wages make up a large amount of the cost structure. Now, I believe what I'm hearing is that some of you guys are sourcing is locally, but if you are sourcing throughout, you know, the US, you can heat map to see the different wages in each occupation and each area to see, okay, if wages make up 50% of the cost, you know, this is what that specific job is costing them. And it really helps you have some ammunition in your pocket when you're going back and forth with them.
Yeah, our focus really is South Florida.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Miami.
I believe you told me is that it's pretty localized for you guys, which we would just drill down with custom work.
Yeah.
But also you can heat map over to South Florida and you would see, at least you would get the idea of what the entry level and median and experience level.
The question here is, what does Miami-Dade do? Yeah. All right, that's good to know.
These are just descriptions of those occupations, and then we give you some information on pricing models. So the rest of this is probably pretty straightforward. Anywhere you see an expand all, it's going to give you some more in-depth. And if you've had a chance to read through the PDFs, you'll see this all printed out in the exact same, you know, the exact same format, just specific to that category. Lots of recent developments here. even more to expand on. These are probably all those positive ones. And then some external demand drivers. I want to make sure that I show you guys a supply chain and vendors tab and also the business questions to ask that Robert brought up. So I'm going to kind of zoom through this and show you. This is where you'll see those top suppliers. So inside the report, we'll give you a list of the top 10 to 15 suppliers in that market based on market share. So this is highest market share to lowest market share.
Could
If
you look
want,
at AECOM?
yeah. And so if you wanted to look at the specific supplier, you could jump to it through the report itself. And you'll be able to see, like I said in the beginning, their operations, any other NAICS codes they operated in, any other reports that they live in for us that they're a top 10 vendor, which they show up in a lot of different services that they offer. The competitive positioning against other suppliers of that same product or service. This you can drop down to change the product or service that you're looking at. Okay. So for architecture services, we could see that they're ranked 2 out of 11 different providers.
Okay. And you had the financial insights tab?
Yep, that's where I'm going right now.
Okay.
So then,
sorry.
That's okay. You keep beating me to the punch. It makes me understand what's important to you guys. And then this is the financials. So it's going to be a financial statement. Like I said, on some private companies, we won't have this information, but some of them we do. I just like to make sure I'm very transparent with that. And that just kind of, you guys know better how you use financials than I do, but I know a lot of people use like Crunchbase and things of that nature to understand the balance sheets.
Is this just scraped from the corporate report of their financials?
Well, we use a lot of different reports. Most of the time it is going to be their 10Ks, but we on any one report we use 25 different sources. So, and some of them are proprietary to us, and then some of them are just public sources. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And this, in the Gilling report that I sent you, you should be able, you would have seen that we provide financials as well. All of the supplier profiles, like I mentioned at the beginning, can be accessed right here where it says Supplier IQ. And this will give you from A to Z the 5,000 different profiles that we have. And again, make sure you're looking for parent companies, not subsidiaries. So if there's something in here that you're not seeing, and if you don't see it because you guys work with smaller private companies, just let us know. We can see if it's in queue for production because we're always adding them, or if we need to do it as custom work.
Let me ask the team real quick. Is there any particular company that you guys deal with fairly frequently that you'd be curious to see what kind of details there are?
A small based one here is Saltz Michelson, SALTZ.
I was just going to say the same name.
Next up, Akai, ACAI and Associates.
So are those both smaller companies?
Yep, they're locally based and they're pretty much on every RFP for A&E services.
Okay.
Was Saltz in there?
No, Salt and Akai both weren't in there, and I'm thinking it's just because they're just too small of companies. But like I said, we could do the work and get you a profile on those, especially if you said they're on every RFP. I feel like that would be valuable information, and we can produce this exact same report for those two companies.
Can we throw one more in, Keith and Associates?
Keith and Associates?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should actually type it up here because I think that's going to search Keith. No, unless it's under Benny Keith Company, but.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, it's another local firm.
Yeah, and I'm thinking because it is local that it's probably not going to be one of the top suppliers, but you guys do a lot of sourcing locally. So.
By requirement, yes.
Yeah.
Any security companies? Let's see.
Don't get Christine all riled up. We're done. We're done.
Okay, I guess the last tab I really wanted to spend a couple minutes on was this business requirements tab. So even if the supplier module doesn't work for you guys and we just do custom on the suppliers, especially the ones that are on every RFP, I think that would be useful, but getting access to the whole library might not be as useful for you. But the business requirement tab lets you have some cadence when you're working with suppliers and making sure you're asking the right questions, making sure you understand what's important when you're qualifying a vendor. Some of the
This is what I
SLAs.
remembered. This is what I
Yeah.
remembered. Okay.
Yeah, and so we give you an expectation of buying lead time. So how long when you go to RFP before you know, bring on that supplier, how long negotiations will take, and the total of everything, what you should be expecting during that, you know, during that project. And then some things to understand with the vendor relationship and how it's leveraged. But then the qualification I think is really important. We rank these all, you know, the more dots, the more important it is. So experience is going to be very important in this market. So when you're evaluating, you're wanting to make sure that you have a very experienced company, and then maybe timeliness. And we also give you some information of what to put in your RFP specifically. I know this was actually really useful in a case where we had call center operations, because the more specific you were in your RFP and the more of these elements that they included, they were able to save 15 to 20% off their contract because of that's how the call center suppliers were operating. So it was very useful to have the specific criteria. And then negotiation questions to ask. So this is just to make sure you're staying away from making emotional decisions, and really asking the same thing of every vendor, making it even kill. But around the area of experience, because of the fact experience is so important, some questions that you should be asking every supplier as you're evaluating who to bring on. Then some key contract clauses. I don't know if you guys do your own contracts, and some key performance indicators. And then the SLAs. So I want to spend time for Q&A. I kind of flew through that fast, but I had the assumption that you guys have seen the PDF. So this is just showing you the live environment. Do you guys have any questions for me? Yes, Constance?
Constance, yep.
Okay.
So for the custom reports on small businesses
Mm-hmm.
or local businesses, what would you guys use to build that report?
We use the same sources that we use for any of our other reports. So like I said, we'll go out and get 10Ks. And what I can do is I can share with the group. We have a file that shows a lot of our sources. Some of them are proprietary to us, but we have our analyst in-house that's specifically their job. And during custom, what we do is we put together that scope of work, which looks like this. And one of the pieces of the scope of work is source identification. So before we even start the project for you, we'll say, these are the sources that we're using. Do you approve of these sources?
Okay, even on private companies, I
Yes.
guess.
And there will be a
And
confidence level, because if we can't, sometimes the information on private companies is just not available. So they'll go out and say, okay, do we have high confidence that we can get this information? Because we don't want to waste your time.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, and some of you might have heard of ESRI, ESRI. It's a huge mapping, geographic, spatial mapping company, and they're privately owned. You know, you got Mr. and Mrs. Dangerman, the president, CEO, and they keep all that stuff, you know, hidden in a locked vault in a basement somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And to get that stuff out of them is hard to do, but you know, we make every effort to be able to do that.
Right. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I can give you guys back a couple minutes of your day, your lunch.
No, I don't have any more questions. We'll have some internal discussion.
Okay.
We'll, of course, you know, we'll always have to get to the pricing question,
Of
and we can do
course.
that. But I just want to go through and make sure we've checked some of the boxes we need internally for the work that we have to do, and we can fill the gap for, you know, what is required of us.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I did see the financial summary. That's why I asked about that. And that's kind of our key question at the moment. But your presentation touched on a lot of other areas that I think would be helpful in our processes, far beyond just financial responsibility. So.
Right on. Okay, well, I appreciate you guys all for joining, and Robert, you putting us together, and Alexa as well. I always appreciate your time and like just listening. And then you and I, Robert, will circle up at some point to,
Yep.
see what the feedback is from the team and just kind of keep this in open communication.
Yeah, maybe you can talk to the Florida State Office and,
About the NASPO
Division
contract,
of Acquisition Services or whatever they're called, and see if they can extend their license to us.
their
But
license. Yeah.
we'll talk.
Okay, sounds good. All right, nice to
Thank
meet
you.
everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great, Bob.